Welcome to Corrective Consciousness, episode 146, the podcast where we explore the inanity of pop culture. I'm your host, vysethebold, and this is...
PyroJackFrost.
That is so unfair. What a beautiful intro Vice gave you. Didn't slip up once, and you just like spat in his face.
One of us had to screw up.
Well,
isn't that the norm?
I am OldManStompy, and I never screw up, as far as you know. So it had to be you.
Okay, it had to be me.
Thanks for taking one on the chin.
Yep.
Ooh,
my chin hurts now, but
sweet no chin music.
Well, we appreciate you soldiering on anyway.
So, we wanted to get an episode here that was on topic with, of course, probably going to be the biggest movie of all time. The trajectory of it is...
it already is the biggest movie, since this is coming out after it's already hit like 1.2 billion.
It hasn't beat the total, probably total gross, but it's the number one weekend of all time.
Yeah.
And very easily.
And I even think like
got
adjusted
to over 1.5 billion.
I even think like adjusted for inflation, whatever, it's like even higher than Titanic or something, or nearing to be higher than Titanic.
Now, I've stayed pretty far away from some spoilers, so I don't know the gist of what happens, but I'm sure it's not too far off from the comic or what I think may happen, because it's a formulaic movie. But I'm looking forward very much to Endgame here. So I will actually be watching this the day before this releases. So
I'm watching it the day after it releases.
But be rest assured that this is a spoiler-free cast. We just wanted to celebrate our love of the Marvel universe by talking about some Marvel video games that we've experienced in the past, and some experiences that we had. And there's even been a few Infinity Gauntlet video games in particular, like that follow at least the skeleton of that story, or the impetus of that story, collecting the gems or protecting the gems. So I did want to go over a couple of them. The first one that always came to mind is actually a game that I played at Pyro's house when we were kids, on your what was it, GZTV, or what was it called?
I think you're talking like that gaming TV that I had that had like
that
folded in.
TV.
It was like a
yeah.
I want to say it was a stupid TV that it was a nice thought, but like my aunt got it for me. It's supposed to be like a gaming TV, and the two speakers folded in to cover the screen when you weren't using it. It was
the GX TV by Samsung.
Did you just look it up or something?
Yep.
It was pretty cool.
Wasn't too far.
But yes, I remember that TV.
Well, that TV was heavily promoted in comic books and magazines at the time, so like it was something that I kind of wanted. So like it was cool that somebody I know had it.
Were you jelly?
I wasn't jealous. I just thought it was cool that I could even like experience one, because I knew I was never going to be able to get one of my own, because we already had as many TVs as we wanted.
True.
At the house, but it was cool that I had access to one. Let's just say that.
Mm-hmm.
But we used to play a lot of Super Nintendo games, and back in the day, and rent games from Blockbuster, and we played Capcom's was it Infinity Gem, or War of the Gems.
Oh yeah.
So this is one of the lesser known Capcom games, because it's not an arcade port. It's actually one of their side-scrolling beat-em-ups. They actually had two games that were kind of like this. They also had an X-Men game that was kind of like that too. But it was on Super Nintendo. It was pretty fun. It wasn't like one of their amazing games, but it was very colorful and allowed you to play as a lot of different characters.
One of the threads that might happen for a lot of Marvel games is they're okay. Like, there are some really good Marvel games that we'll probably talk about, but
sure,
if you took all the Marvel games ever made, on average, they're decent.
and like that's with a lot of lifting from the most recent Spider-Man game.
But I like this game in particular because it came out around the same time as the original Marvel vs. Capcom, if I remember right. Like, it came out in in like it came out like in the Super Nintendo era where it was kind of overlapping with the like the PlayStation. So I think Sega was already having its crossovers, or the Capcom games with their crossovers, like the fighting games. So they kind of like came out with like a Super Nintendo game, kind of like as a stopgap. So I like this game. It was pretty fun. But it probably doesn't hold a candle to a lot of the other games on this list. But it's by no means a bad game, that's for sure. And I also wanted to talk a little bit about the current Spider-Man game, which I'm currently playing.
I haven't played it, but I heard it's like I don't want to say amazing, but really, really good.
No, it's an amazing Spider-Man, maybe even spectacular.
Oh, is it Ultimate?
Maybe even Peter Parker Spider-Man.
Perhaps even the web of.
Man, we're annoying.
I've been telling you this the entire podcast.
At least you count yourself in this. But anyway, I like it quite a bit. I am about like 75% through the story. I haven't downloaded any of the DLC, but I think I might stay away from it, and here's why. I thought the coolest thing about the game, other than the mechanics and the way he controls, are spot on. I really, really love that. I also love traversing a very realistic Manhattan, especially since I know Manhattan so well now. It's very, very, very accurate, except for the addition of the Marvel universe skyscrapers, like Avengers Tower and the Baxter Building. That
Wait,
kind of
those
stuff.
don't actually exist?
No. Well, not that I've been able to find. Maybe I just don't know my way around town.
No,
but,
you need to walk around a little more. You'll find them.
But yeah, no, I really enjoyed that, especially in the beginning of the game. For an open world game, it was surprisingly much more open than most other games of its type. So this game gives you no restrictions on where you can go from the very beginning of the game. You can do whatever you want. They won't cut off certain areas. You can swing around the whole city, and without having to have a place blocked off, which is really cool. So you can pick up like a lot of the collectibles while you're doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I did that very early on in the game. So right now, the game is getting a little samey. That's just kind of what happens with some
with a lot of open world games.
Open world games, yeah. I think this story is going on a little too long. It would have been better if it was shorter. They are mixing it up with the story elements because they allow you to play as other characters for different gameplay types, which is pretty cool. They also have versions of popular Spider-Man characters that aren't just like useless, which is pretty cool. Like Mary Jane and Miles Morales are in the game. Miles Morales is not a Spider-Man in the game, at least not yet that I know of. So
setting it up for a sequel.
Possibly, or even just having him in there as a major side character is pretty cool. He has like a hacking type of gameplay element, and Mary Jane is the stealth character in the game. So those are all pretty cool, and I really love the graphic style. And they nail the sense of humor really well. It's just I wish it got a little bit more varied with like the combat situations, because it's getting a little bit boring at this point. They need to introduce more enemy types to keep me interested. But overall, a great game. You won't be disappointed. I just want to beat it at this point.
I kind of want to go a level above that, like, actually. So I finished the game not 100%. Like, it was called 100% completion, but I didn't actually, like, I didn't platinum the game. I just did all the missions.
Sure.
So I think this is, like, one of the best takes on the Spider-Man character since, like, maybe the early
Story-wise.
days. Like, the best take on the character since the Marvel movies started coming out. I actually like it better than the original, the Tobey Maguire movies.
Yeah, in fact, the telling of the Doc Ock story is quite compelling and quite good. They kind of mixed it with Doc Ock's character with Doc Connor's character in the comics, with the role that he has with Peter. But it's well acted and it's well told. So really, really good.
It's also ever since the superhero movie boom, I guess starting with like the first Spider-Man movie and the first X-Men movie, like really got the ball rolling again. We've been sort of inundated with these movies that are intended to be like reintroductions to the characters for people who may not have been following the canon, and they don't necessarily focus on getting the characters correct so much as like making them compelling to watch, such that you want to keep like watching more Marvel movies. So this is the first work in Marvel fiction at this level in a very long time that treats the character as though he's existed for a long time and has a story behind him, which also
it kind of has like it comes in like mid like story drama with him and Mary Jane.
Right.
Okay.
That means you can have Miles Morales, who for those unfamiliar is the first legacy Spider-Man character, or the most recent legacy Spider-Man character to pick up the mantle.
He's 10 years old, but he in terms of like how old the continuity is, that's relatively new.
So this means that Peter Parker has been fighting crime as Spider-Man for several years now. He knows most of his villains pretty well. A lot of them have already been in jail. Obviously, Dr. Octopus, we're still telling his story, so he's not part of that.
But the Shocker is like a well-known villain to him, and same thing with Kingpin and all that.
Rhino, and Scorpion. Like all these guys, the Vulture, like all these guys are pretty well known. He knows all their backstories. And they use this as a vehicle to tell a story that they probably couldn't even tell in the comics. Once the third act of the story begins, like everything from what you'd expect based on watching the Marvel movies goes totally off the rails. Like nothing is off limits. They can do whatever they want. They were given completely free reign with the character. I was amazed what they were allowed to do, and it's extremely worthwhile to play all the way through. It's a great story, not just a good superhero movie.
Well, that's encouraging. I mean, maybe I just like hit that fatigue point because I was playing too many of the side quests. I played them all. Like the Kingpin layers and all that stuff.
Sure.
And the Taskmaster side missions. So a lot of that like combat heavy style just kind of burned me out on what I was doing because it got pretty samey. But it's encouraging that the story elements allow it to
it's
do
also
something
like
different.
True to the character. So I think even the comics have gotten away from this a little bit, in the sense that there was a high profile storyline, I guess like several years ago at this point. The what is it, One Moment in Time and One More Day, where
is it the Mephisto thing?
Yeah, where Spider-Man, but they decided that Spider-Man was not relatable as a married man, so they basically had him mortgage his marriage away to the devil so that Aunt May could live, which is antithetical to the point of the character. Like the idea is that Spider-Man takes responsibility for his actions, and so like why would he give up, like when Aunt May is telling him to let her go, why would he mortgage his life?
She's also a very she's an old character. I mean, like she's going to hit her time eventually.
I feel like
anyway.
that's one issue with a lot of comics in general, is that they always end up having to go back to the status quo because that's what most of the readers are used to.
Well, they did that in Curb Your Enthusiasm, which was kind of cool, actually. But in a show where with a main character who's the biggest jerk in the universe, basically. This is kind of okay. They have him dating a new woman every episode, so hilarity ensues. But
anyway, just to close this one off, the interplay between like Spider-Man's relationship with Mary Jane, with Miles, with Dr. Octopus, well, Otto Octavius, he's not Dr. Octopus at the start, of course. With Aunt May, like it plays into his central theme of taking responsibility for your actions, and I can appreciate that that they handed the story to someone with the desire to like put that storytelling first beyond telling a story that will just spawn an indefinite number of sequels. Like, it stands on its own. You can play it even if they make like 8 more Spider-Man games. You can play this by itself and it would still be magnificent, and you wouldn't need to play any other ones.
I really did like that they had a large part of the game's focus be on his volunteerism to the community, like outside of being a superhero, which I thought was really neat. Like, most other games wouldn't waste time with something like that, because I mean, there's no action going on during those portions of the game, just you walking around the building and talking to people. But it really does help build the character and give you a good sense of the kind of man that Spider-Man wants to be. So I thought that was really neat. But somebody else take the floor on maybe some favorite Marvel titles.
I mean, I think out of all the Marvel games that existed, some of my favorites are still have to be the beat 'em ups, like Captain America and the Avengers, which I remember playing in the arcade.
No,
I remember that's the first time I've ever heard of who Vision was from that game.
Oh yeah,
I would play him all the time.
He looks weird in that game too.
Well, I mean, I think that was the original version of Vision, all white, and he could goes through things and whatever. I think his newer version, the green and yellow and red color scheme, wasn't until like the past 10 years or so, but or maybe even 5. And then also with that, Spider-Man and Venom Maximum Carnage, that was also a classic. And that's the first time I've heard of like anyone other than Venom as terms of symbiotes. So, like, I would say a decent amount of, because I never read comics that much. Like, my comics were whatever I would borrow from you, because you used to collect them, or like, I don't even think I collected many comics at all. Like, I was into Transformers, but I didn't really read the comics until more recently. So a lot of my knowledge of X-Men came from the cartoon, or from like the beat 'em up games. And I think those were really good, and they were really, like, obviously they were beat 'em up games in the sense of you felt like they were unfair at times, because obviously they started off in the arcades. They wanted you to give them as much money as possible, but they were really fun for what they were, and I think they were some of the best beat 'em ups of their time in general anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I remember a lot of iconic arcade moments from when I was a kid playing that X-Men arcade game.
Yep.
That one in particular was at a couple different places.
What was it that Magneto
that
says?
I frequented? Oh, no.
That's Colossus.
Welcome to die.
Welcome to die. Yeah.
Hey, welcome to die.
But yeah, those 3 games were amazing.
Welcome, X-Chicken. He also says that. I mean, that machine was iconic to me. We used to have a Fuddruckers near us that had it, and I would get tokens, to play it, and while we waited there for our food, and we would go like maybe once a month or something like that. So that was always a big treat for me to go to a place like that had an arcade game while you waited for your food, and just like playing that game with a couple like random kids was always a lot of fun. I always loved playing that game, and trying out the special powers was just always a lot of fun for me when I was a kid.
Which also meant that, like, if someone had a birthday party at a place with an arcade or something, like one of those like time-based ones where you could play the games indefinitely, you would just like play the game and spam the finishing moves over and over again because you had infinite credits.
That and Ninja Turtles.
Those are the luxury.
That was the only way to feel like you could beat them, is if you had infinite money.
The Simpsons game.
Yep. But yeah, those games, and I think the other games that I really liked in terms of Marvel games were, I don't remember what the original ones were, but Ultimate Alliance. Oh, X-Men Legends was like the original Diablo-esque Marvel X-Men game, and then Ultimate Alliance is the newer one where it's more than just the X-Men. Like, those games, I was never much of an X-Men, let's say, fan, but I loved playing the X-Men Legends games because I liked like Diablo type games. So just going around collecting, like leveling up mainly, because you didn't really collect much like equipment. It was because you didn't collect weapons, but you collected armor, I guess. But still, just using all their special powers. I think my favorite character was Iceman.
Oh, neat!
Especially because one of his powers is somewhat useless, but it was fun. You can skate. You create ice and just skate around on it. So like
That's fun.
I would just use my movement power all the time, even though I was not helping in battle at all, just because it was fun to.
So it's funny. It's funny that you mentioned this because if you look at like a timeline of the release of all the major Marvel games, you can kind of tell like what the big merchandise drivers were for them at the time. Because like in the 80s to the 90s, it's all like X-Men games or like Venom, and then all of a sudden it's like all stuff's inspired by the designs of the Ultimate Universe, and then it's all like Avengers stuff after that.
Well, there was also the time period where like everything was inspired by the movies too. Like there was that time period where basically all of the Marvel games were like, the black leather clad X-Men, for instance, and like the Sam Raimi Spider-Man games. They even had that X-Men Origins game, the Wolverine game, that was way better than the movie. Way better, not even close. In fact, I keep meaning to play that game because apparently it's pretty authentic to the way you think that a Wolverine game should play. That's on my list for sure. OldManStompy, do you have a notable choice other than of course, PS4 Spider-Man?
So I mean, I just going off of the list of things we haven't discussed yet. I really like the Deadpool game. I thought that was another another video game that was like one of the most, probably the most honest interpretation of the character outside of the comics, except for until the Ryan Reynolds movie came out.
Sure.
But
You're 100% correct.
And it's not like, I mean, it was not a horrible game, but it's not like it was a good game. But it was still like in terms of characterization, it's great.
I wasn't playing it for the gameplay. Like, the sense of humor was perfect, and it's hard to get humor right in a video game when comic timing is involved, and the Deadpool game hit it pretty out of the park.
I think my favorite scene was when there was a gap he couldn't cross, and then he started thinking.
I was gonna say that.
He started thinking, and then his speech bubbles appeared, and he's like, "Wait, keep doing that."
Yeah, I was actually 100% going to just going to mention that. That is a fantastic interpretation of this. It really is. I also really liked. I don't want to like this, but if you want a fine piece of crap game, definitely play the NES X-Men game, which may very well be it has to be on a contender for like worst. Like officially released console games of all time. Like it's incomprehensible. Like it's just, I don't know how you could play that game for real. Like and be good at it.
I had actually just watched, so I've like as like a little bit of a side hobby, I've been like watching, like a retro gaming YouTube channels, because there is like for people of my age, like in their late 30s now, like a spate of YouTube channels popping up for like people who want to remember like what it was like in the NES days.
Remember the good old days.
Commercials from the 80s, which means like now I am officially old because I've lapped the 20-year rule, right? And like now there's like a pop culture icon created to cater to my nostalgia, So there was a guy, like he put a whole video on like this retro game meet that he went to, and he was one of those people who was like trying to collect like a big chunk of the NES game catalog, and like he knew more or less like the list of games he didn't own, and he knew obviously that some of them weren't great because he would have heard about them, like just tangentially. So he picked up the NES game, and he just like had this long segment. He was just like a regular guy. He wasn't like really in your face like the AVGN interview, like the review where I first heard about the X-Men game. But he was just so like downtrodden and disappointed that he bought this game, and it was an X-Men game, and he loved the X-Men, but it was just such a piece of fucking garbage. Like, it reminds me, like, because this happens to me every time I dredge up my old issues of Nintendo Power, and I remember like a game that I saw that when I was a kid, look at the greatest fucking game, and now like 20 years later, I just like digging through my collection of like ROMs on my computer, and I just like plug it in because I just want to try it out, and it's just like I cannot get into it because it's bad. Nintendo Power lied to me, or they told me it was bad, and I thought they were lying.
Well, there were two games in particular that I remember from Nintendo Power, me wanting to always like pick up because like they appealed to me from an aesthetic and conceptual perspective. Mm-hmm. So one of them being Darkman, which is a licensed title based on a Sam Raimi movie.
That was I liked that movie.
Yeah, I like that movie too. I mean, I love Sam Raimi movies in general.
The movie's not the problem.
Yes.
Yeah. So this game was made by Ocean, which almost universally made shit based off of popular licenses of the day. They made like a Lethal Weapon game. They made Addams Family. Addams Family is probably the most prominent title that's like that. They made a lot of other things too, but this game appealed to me because in Nintendo Power they had like the basics of what you did in the game, and if you ever saw Darkman, like his gimmick is he couldn't feel pain. That was number one. But the other thing is that he had like a machine that made synthetic skin that only lasted a few hours. I think it was 2 hours, something like that. It had a hard 2-hour limit. And so he used it to kind of infiltrate things, disguise himself as other people, and because he was a burned man, he was a burn victim, so he would wear these skin masks, but they took that concept and they said, okay, well that means like you could put on these different costumes and gain different abilities because you could dress up as this character and all of a sudden you can like punch things well. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, that's really neat. That's little Nemo. Remember the little Nemo game for NES?
Yeah.
Where you could like enlist the help of other animals and things like that that had different abilities. Well, I thought that was cool, and then I played it and it was garbage because it's a fucking like Ocean piece of shit. So and there's another game called Daydream Davy that was made by HAL. So I was like, HAL makes good games.
This one you've talked about before, but you're welcome to continue.
Did we talk about Daydream Davy?
You've definitely brought it up before.
Oh, okay.
I remember this rant, but you can go full Lotus Prince on us. It's okay.
Well, I thought this was cool because there were varying gameplay styles. Because Daydream Davy had different levels based off of whatever he was daydreaming about, so different parts of history is what you would end up doing. You would go into cowboy times and have like a shooting level and that kind of time, that kind of thing, and that was shit too. So like, I'm glad you brought that up, but we should go back to Marvel titles.
I can take it or leave it.
Yeah.
You're the moderator.
Well. This is the inanity that we talked about, of course, but I also really loved the Spider-Man game at the time on PlayStation, but I have to say that the new one probably eclipses all the old ones. You don't really need to play the old ones. Unless they have like a different gameplay style. Like there's a couple Metroidvanias on the DS. That were a lot of fun. I think it was Shattered Dimensions was one of them. And the other...
I've been meaning to play that just because it has all the the Into the Spider-Verse Spider-Man, more or less.
Yeah. That's the first game appearance of Spider-Man Noir, and Spider-Man 2099 in there, which was pretty cool. Which kind of make cameo appearances in the new one, right. Just as like costume changes.
I haven't played it, but I heard the new Iron Man VR game is actually pretty good.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't even know about that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's like actually out yet, but the general idea is that it's a PlayStation game, I believe, and you use the move controllers as your thrusters. So it's
neat.
And they're also used to shoot things. So if you put them behind you, you'll move forward. But also you can put like one behind you and while you're shooting with the other one, and apparently it takes a long time to actually get a hold of. But you start to feel actually like Iron Man. I heard someone who was playing it, and they said that at the beginning they were feeling like it was a rail shooter, but it's not. So you actually have to move away from enemies shooting at you. So apparently it's pretty cool though, but I don't know much more than that. So
it kind of reminds me like of how it feels when you're in like a lucid dream and you're trying to figure out how to fly. You know what I mean?
Yes.
You're some number of things will work and some number of things will wake you up, and you're trying to figure out how to avoid like one set of things and do the other set because you don't actually know how to fly.
Kind of like in the Shazam movie, like like the main character literally doesn't know how to fly because he doesn't know how to make himself fly.
Yeah.
That was like part of he basically has to practice flying because he doesn't know what mechanism you enact with your body in order to just fly. It's not like you're flapping your wings as a superhero. So like he doesn't know like how to tell his body to float. So that was pretty funny. That was a good part of that movie. But yeah, I mean, I kind of liken it to QWOP. that sounds like QWOP almost.
Actually, yeah.
What's actually pretty funny about that is this weekend, you guys know this. Me and my girlfriend went to the Museum of the Moving Image, and they had an exhibit on sports video games. And of course, sports video games are incredibly important to the history of video games, considering all the early games were big.
And considering the vast number of episodes of this podcast that we spent talking about them.
Don't worry, Jocks. We have something for you in the very far future. But anyway, they actually had QWOP set up. And I had my girlfriend play it, and she's like, "Get the shit away from me!" Like almost immediately.
That's a good reaction to it.
So that was funny. I also really quickly want to mention how disappointed I was by certain Marvel games, especially in the early days. Because you know, a lot of them were just like, you know, cashing games. But
like that was normal, right? Like it was things were notorious. I forget which game broke the streak, but like it was known for a very long time that
Spider-Man on the PS1.
Okay, that's probably a good guess.
Pretty much
but like if a game was licensed, it was almost always universally bad.
Like
right?
Superman 64.
Yeah. I mean that's like a very extreme example.
I know.
Batman had some good games because they were almost all made by Sunsoft and Konami, and almost all of those were good. But it depended on who made them. You know, Konami had Batman Returns, which was really good. You know, stuff like that. But like Marvel games really didn't until they were made by Capcom. They weren't didn't get really good. But so like the one that made me mad in particular was Spider-Man and X-Men in Arcade's Revenge. You guys ever play that one?
I've heard of it. I don't think I've actually played it.
This is like the weird one where you have to like reset the game to beat it or something.
No, that's X-Men on the Genesis, made by Sega.
Okay.
Those games are actually pretty decent. The Marvel games on the first party Genesis games.
Super Nintendo one then, because I think I did play that one.
So this game was made by Acclaim, and no surprise it was bad at the time. But Acclaim and LGN, I think. But anyway, it was actually on every major system at the time, including the NES, Super Nintendo, Game Boy, Game Gear, Genesis, everything. Super Nintendo. So you know it has to be good. So, you know, it had a long dev cycle. But it was a game that on the surface sounded really cool, just kind of like, you know, Darkman did.
You sound disappointed.
Well, what was cool about it was that in every level was supposed to be a little bit different. It would have a different gameplay style. There's a common theme here, and you would play as a different character in each level, and it was themed around that character. Mm-hmm. So like the first level was a Spider-Man level. And it was pretty open-ended, and you needed to find bombs hidden around an area. That wasn't too bad. But then once you did that, you had to free the X-Men from the machinations of Arcade, who is a Marvel villain, a very minor one, I should mention. But you could play as Gambit, and you would have this gigantic ball. Like Indiana Jones style ball following you, and it had the worst platforming in the world. There was this really stupid level where you played as Storm, and you had to swim.
Wait, what?
You were the point was that the traps that he had devised were supposed to hinder the X-Men. So he put like Storm in a tank, like a water tank because she's claustrophobic. That's like one of her character traits.
I
in
didn't
the
even know that.
comic book. Yeah, that's a thing from like way back in the day. But here's the problem. You don't give a shit about that stuff when you're playing a video game. You want to play as a superhero and you want to experience their superpowers. You don't want to play a hampered version of them. That's stupid.
So it's the same problem as a lot of early action figures in that like a lot of superhero power sets don't translate well to like the limited scope of movement that you can give an action figure. Like I had a Gambit action figure and we used to make fun of it because Gambit in the comics is like the coolest superhero. He has the ability to charge things with kinetic energy. That's why he throws playing cards. It's a great visual. But the Gambit, like the first Gambit figure, just had like a karate chop, and I was so disappointed as like a 10-year-old. And like that's all it did, and also mine broke, so like his leg was kind of stuck at a funny angle.
Jeez.
Mon ami.
Yeah.
Mon Dieu. I definitely agree with you. Like, and they would come up with stuff like toy wise, like that didn't fit their character at all. Like pretty much the spider buggy was invented because of toys, because they wanted to give him a Batmobile. But why does Spider-Man need a Batmobile? He could swing wherever he wants. It's like that's way faster.
That is like my favorite part of the Spider-Man like mythos is that occasionally he's like clearly web swinging in a place where it should be literally impossible for him to do that. And like yes, technically he doesn't need a spider jet, but like in the X-Force crossover issue I have, they're like in the fucking desert and he's hanging from like off the top of the panel, and there can't possibly be anything for him to be attached to.
If anything, he breaks the fourth wall just a little bit less than Deadpool.
Yeah, I mean, that's about the best that I can come up with.
Well, I named all the ones I really wanted to talk about, but if anybody else wants to throw in a couple jabs here.
I'm going to give a shout out to the Hulk games. The Hulk and Superman have kind of the same problem in that they're both like basically indestructible and exactly as strong as they need to be. So it's hard to capture that in a game that still makes you feel like you have some amount of danger. And they've never really made a good Superman game. They've made like one average one, like with the Superman Returns movie, but they made a pretty good Hulk game that had kind of the similar mechanics to the Asura's Wrath game, where you're not really like, you don't really have a health meter, you have like a mayhem meter.
Yeah, that one's Ultimate Destruction that you're referencing, right?
Isn't that game what they based the system for Prototype off of? Or is it...
Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's like a GTA style game, which is perfect for the Hulk. He could do whatever you want in it. You can do missions if you want.
He gets star ratings from the police to see how many police are chasing after him. He has to to find hookers to heal his HP and
Hulk smash.
It's just like GTA.
But I just love the freedom in those games. Like you could crunch two cars and use them as like gauntlets, which is a lot of fun. That was a fun game. I wish they would republish that one because I think it would be more popular now than it was at the time.
The funniest part, probably actually not just of the Hulk, but also I guess of Prototype, was something my roommate pointed out to me, which is if you like pick up was that like the bystanders have like incredible tunnel vision. So, like, his favorite part would be I would pick up a car and I would start running down the street with it to, like, throw it at an enemy. And sometimes, like, the fender would, like, hit a guy in the back of the head and he would look around like he had no idea what just happened to him. It wasn't like a supervillain showdown going on right behind him and he's like, what? Why does my head hurt?
Nice. Any other mentions?
I mean, the other ones I just want to mention are good games. I don't really know... Unless we want to talk about it a little bit longer than that, but like Marvel, just Marvel vs. Capcom. Like those are always good fighting games. I'm not a huge
the way
into
they were
games,
animated,
but the original was the best, I think. Or 2 was it? I think 2 was the one that everyone like loved. I mean, like the other ones were good.
The first two.
Yeah, the other ones were okay and were probably like. But I'm not a fighting game person, so I don't have much to say other than. It was fun playing those, and again, like, because Deadpool's my favorite Marvel character. Him in 3 is amazing when his like finishing move where he takes his health bar and beats you over the head with it.
Yeah,
pineapple surprise.
And then the only other one I really wanted to say are the Lego games, just because I like the Lego games in general. like Lego Harry Potter, Lego Lord of the Rings. They got kind of repetitive, so I stopped playing them. But the Lego Marvel games are pretty fun. Those are the only other shout-outs I really wanted to give.
Oh, I do want to make like one quick comment because it was sort of scratching at the edge of my memory, and someone might have already commented on it because it was something that Pyro said earlier. The current Vision design, the red and green and yellow one, is actually the original design from 1967.
Oh, it is.
Yeah. So I remember like seeing that and thinking it looked weird at the time because he had been redesigned in the 80s and 90s when I was reading comic books. I guess because at the time he looked really like Silver Agey and it didn't age well. And
so they made him all white, and then they went back to it because they said that's his original version.
So, I don't know what he looks like right now. I assume he looks like he does in the movies because they tend to.
He does.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's very much inspired by his original look, I believe. But I think at the time they kind of wanted to make him look a little Messiah-ish.
Right.
So that I think they were going for that imagery.
And also, like, that was the kind of color palette that like the New Gods would eventually have. It's the kind of like inhuman color palette that you expect, an alien entity to have in the bright colors of the Silver Age.
Yeah, you always got the feeling that the Vision was on another plane of existence, like something that like the human characters couldn't relate to.
It was like Brainiac. I guess he was the Brainiac of the Marvel universe because usually you can tell which character from DC or Marvel like they're supposed to be taking off of.
Yeah. I would say so. Of course he's the good version. I mean, except for you have Ultron, which is his evil his evil twin.
Yeah.
Essentially, but I think that you have something there. Of course, he's insanely important to the Marvel universe as a whole. I don't even know if they'll get into that, with the movies, because it's a very bizarre concept.
I mean, I think other than him being like having, like his whole being is an infinity gem basically in the movies. I think that's really all his connection is going to be in the cinematic universe.
I don't know if they're going to. They may even go the House of M route. I don't know. Who knows? But the House of M storyline is really kind of fun.
So they're pushing House of M just because Wanda is so powerful. Like that would be the only reason they'd go in that direction. Like they don't have access to the X-Men characters yet in the cinematic universe.
Sure.
So I guess it remains to be seen if they'll do that as a storyline.
Well, she's really the only X-Men character they really interact with just because of a deal they made. And as a result, Quicksilver dies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
But he's still alive in the X-Men Cinematic Universe.
Yeah. I think she is still alive in the X-Men universe, but she's barely around. I think they kind of made a deal. They were like, well, you can make one of the twins prominent, and we'll make the other twin prominent. But yeah.
Right, and the Scarlet Witch is a canonical Avenger, so it makes more sense to keep her as a character.
Everybody's an Avenger.
Yeah. Wolverine is an Avenger, and they couldn't use him.
Yeah, I mean, Spider-Man was always a reservist, but not a real Avenger. I mean, they kind of added him to add him, I guess, because he's so popular. But I guess in recent years he's more of a team character. Like he was on Fantastic Four for a while there. He was one of the Fantastic Four.
I mean, he's just really popular and likable, so it would make sense they want to have him in everything.
Yeah, that's true. Same thing with Wolverine. So anyway, they're two most popular characters.
I don't know if Wolverine's likable. He's definitely popular.
He's popular.
I mean, he's their Batman.
Yes.
He's their Batman.
I guess.
Dark story,
true,
dark
true.
background,
Personality, definitely, yeah.
Like violent, kind of character, not lighthearted. Like Spider-Man's lighthearted. So anyway, I think we did a good survey here. So we'll move on to our weeklies here. OldManStompy, would you like to read a couple fan reactions, please?
Okay, sure. So we have a fan reaction from Dracologist. Thank you. So I can't quite interpret this first sentence. It says, I really enjoyed Vice's breathing exercise. If you can remind me what that was from last week, perhaps.
So I think they are referring to the fact that my mic was turned up really high, so people could hear my breathing in the previous episode.
Sounds evocative, and I'm glad I didn't listen last week.
It was hard to control myself. I'll just
I
say
see.
that.
All right. So, Sacra Corona is the name of the Hungarian crown, a rather adventurous piece of royal headgear that has many stories attached to it. And this is also the asteroid did not kill the dinosaurs via the blast. It was just the fallout, the cold, and lack of food. Although I'm sure it did kill a few dinosaurs, like directly. It was pretty big,
Especially the one that
it
landed
missed
on.
all of them.
especially Chucko.
Choco. God damn it.
So to robot is to work without pause. Jib is the front sail, if I recall. Cut of the jib might refer to as how sailors identified different ships. GameStop thing makes me think of the good old days of sharewares. Loot box lightsabers. I guess this is in reference to the new EA Star Wars game. Kunoichi means female ninja. Kamaitachi is the sickle weasel in Japanese mythology, and Yaksha is a Buddhist spirit. So thank you, Dracologist, for that etymology lesson. I appreciate it. And then we have a comment from Robert Edwards. Says, jumping on the thought about GameStop doing poorly, here in the Netherlands has been a slew of stories surrounding toy stores. Quite a few have been forced to close shop recently, and although some are getting bought and reopened, it doesn't look like it'll last. Things are just cheaper online. It's not even dirty tactics, as they do with Toys R Us in the US. It's just the way of the world. What I do find strange is that brand new physical games here can be bought cheaper than digital games. My brother got Resident Evil 2 for €42 instead of the full price of 60. Is that happening in the US, or is it trending towards full digital?
So I would actually say that it depends on the game, but I mean, like, if there is a pretty popular game, a lot of times the digital price will remain high, but the physical copies of that game will be cheap.
I was going to say it depends on the store, too, because like the Nintendo
Yeah.
store and even the PlayStation store a lot of times don't do many sales. They've been doing more recently, but for a while they didn't do many, if any, sales, so they would just stay at full price all the time, whereas brick and mortar stores kind of need to do sales because they need to move the product because they take up space. So they would do sales more often, and that's why you would find them cheaper.
I found that, like, over the course of my entire consumer history, that brick and mortar store prices are totally arbitrary. I used to walk into GameStop and make fun of the fact that sometimes a used copy of a game would be more expensive than a new copy.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Sure.
Not even because it's worth more or less. It's just because someone made an inventory decision that they want to move, like, the new copies of a game, and they have obviously not every store will have used copies of a game. So that decision is made, and it makes sense, just not in the context of walking into a single store. I have also gotten into arguments. I love arguing with the GameStop guys. It drives me crazy. I don't even know why I ever go to the store, because they'll sell you a digital copy of the game or a download code for it at the same price as a physical copy when they don't have the physical copy, and it drives me crazy. Like, why did I come here? I don't want to buy your digital copy. Like, I don't even get to use your internet. I have to go get my own internet. What a waste.
It only makes sense in one context. Well, two. You're buying a gift. That's number one. Or you have a gift card.
Or there's a promotion, and you need to buy it from the store to get it.
Yeah, but yes, stupid.
So I would say something like this does happen. So I've heard, and I'm kind of curious about this, that in the Benelux region, there is like a huge issue with certain kinds of like piracy. That like for example, when the Phoenix Wright games came out, they only sold like a few hundred copies because everybody had already downloaded the game. So there was like no point in selling it. So and like that probably impacted
DS
to
games,
some extent.
DS piracy was rampant because of the R4 card of thing going on.
But not to the point where like it was rampant here, but not to the point where it suppressed like the physical sales of games practically to nothing.
On DS games, I think there was that big of a problem. I think towards the end of its life, it really hurt it.
And it hurt the Dreamcast too. Like there are definitely systems where because they were so easy to crack. Like
people had modded, had been playing CDRs on their Dreamcast almost immediately. That was a huge problem. Even the original Xbox had that issue to some extent until the Xbox Live came around.
Right.
I remember people having entire hard drives full of Xbox games like right away. The Wii also had it too.
I was like that for PS1. That was my thing in college when I
really
had. Yeah, I had a modded PS1 or PS2.
But that was way after
PS2.
Oh,
sorry,
okay.
PS2.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
but
I
nowadays,
also the PS2 is super easy to mod, especially the slim version. Like all you had to do was tape a piece of tissue paper in the right spot and get a boot disk. You didn't even have to do any installation.
Yeah, that was incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we should move on to our fan question.
All right.
As well.
So we have a fan question from Fakafan. So thank you again to our fans who supplied responses. So from Fakafan it says, what kind of movement speed is your favorite in video games? For example, mine is when your character has a normal or slow walk cycle animation, but they still move really fast, like in Catherine. Or games where your character walks just fast enough to not complain too much, but you do get a way to go faster, like in Zelda on Super Nintendo with the Pegasus boots, or Breath of the Wild when you can use the shields to glide or the horses to gallop. Speed feels good, but the normal speed is still good, so that you don't get bothered or annoyed. And also has fast travel. What a time saver.
My favorite, when I think of this, I think of Rocket Knight Adventures.
Mm-hmm.
With the character Sparkster, he flies so fast that he can't control it. Like he's obviously flailing when he's using his booster jack. So I really like that because of the lightheartedness of seeing the character. Like he's the hero, but he's barely knows what he's doing. I just love that. And it's evident in his animations.
I mean, like, I don't know if I have anything to say specific about movement speed. First of all, I don't like characters that walk too fast. Like, that's one of the reasons why I never got into Sonic, was because I felt like it was kind of uncontrollable. I know it was an uncontrollable platformer, which I didn't really like. So I don't like when they move too fast, but I think more in terms of animation. I really like when developers put the time in to make, like, walking upstairs and ladders look like they make sense, and not just, hey, here's an animation and I don't care what this ladder looks like, he's gonna do the ladder animation, if you know what I mean.
It doesn't matter if he actually grabs onto a rung or in space between several rungs. He's going to get up this ladder, and Snake Curator will play. So I tend to value like precision in movement. Of course, speed is nice, but like I'm thinking of like Celeste or Super Meat Boy, where you have like pretty perfect control of your character and it's built into the requirements of the game.
And
or,
if
like,
you
even going, yep.
I was gonna say, and if you screw up, it was your fault, not because the game having poor like lag or whatever it is.
Right. So even from like the retro sense, like the Mega Man games, where you have like pretty good control of your character in midair. And also, that like if even a single pixel of Mega Man is on top of a platform, he'll still land on it, and the game knows that you have that much leeway, and they'll require you to use it. So you kind of like learn how to control your character really well. That's kind of what I like. Obviously for speed, I guess I would agree with Fakafan in that I'd like to be able to go as fast as I would think I need to be able to go. I hate having to like wait for a part of the game to finish before I get like a speed upgrade. It doesn't make sense why they don't just give that to you at the start. Sometimes it's funny, like in Final Fantasy VI, where they like added a run button to the Game Boy Advance, but they still had like the sprint shoes that make you run faster. So you go like really really fast if you have the sprint shoes and hit the run button. It's really funny. Or like Ultima 7. Where the game speed is, or any game where the speed is tied to your processor speed in its original release, where you can like
Oregon Trail was like that too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that. Oh man.
The first time I saw somebody play Ultima 7 was my cousin. He played it on his I can't remember what the processor of his computer was, but it showed in digital on the front of the console that it got up to 33 megahertz. And I guess you could overclock it to 66. But after that, once you got to 88, it turned into a couple of flaming tire tracks.
It's gone to plaid. Nice. Well, any final words on this topic, gentlemen?
No, I think that covered it. I mean, like, for me, again, it was more about the looks, I guess, and not being too fast. That's just my only thing.
Gotcha. Well, that'll be the show for this week. We want to thank all of our fans who contributed questions, especially our part-time hosts. Please keep us supplied with awesome topics of your own by submitting questions of your own via this YouTube and SoundCloud pages. We actually got quite a few, especially from our YouTube page, so keep it up this week. So while there, give us thumbs ups, likes, and 5-star ratings on iTunes. It helps promote and spread awareness of the show, and any bit of encouragement helps keep the show going. You can also catch us on Tuesdays on our sister podcast, Reactive Consciousness, the in-depth podcast about what happened this week in our lives. Finally, you can friend me as vysethebold on Steam, PSN, Xbox Live, Twitter, Battle.net, and Switch.
And you can find me as PyroJackFrost on Steam, Battle.net, and PSN.
And you can find me as OldManStompy on most major gaming and social media networks. Although most recently, I've been on the Nintendo Switch Online service, complaining about how bad all the old NES games.
They can also find you at their local arcade, putting a quarter on that DDR machine.
I am familiar with the coin line. These days, it's more of a card line because they use cards. We should give Lotus a shout out. Should we?
Oh yes. Be sure to check out Lotus Prince. He's been doing a lot of streams lately. Please do support him on his Patreon as well, and his YouTube channel. He works very, very hard on all of these things. So far, he's the only one of us that has a Patreon. He puts so much effort into doing his Let's Plays and streams, and he's very, very reliable, and I'm sure most of you already know this, but you should kick him a few bucks if you don't already do so. Any little bit helps, and he will greatly appreciate it. He appreciates everything that's done for him.
That was very nice. I'm sure he'll appreciate that and totally forget that we forgot on Tuesday.
Well, he won't edit this, so he won't know.
he can put his own endorsement in on Tuesday.
Actually, he's being super nice to us. He's even making a trailer for this week, even though he's not on. So, he's a heck of a dude.
What a thoughtful lad.
So he is.
Quite the gent.
But hopefully, one of these days I'll start up one here for Corrective. I hope eventually to do that. Maybe I might even get in on Patreon before it ditches its legacy deal. So I might partake in that. So I'll give an update on that next week. All right. Well, we'll catch everybody on Reactive on Tuesday. Everyone, catch ya.
Peace out.
Cheers.